Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Box to Box podcast. Today, as always, I'm joined by my co-host Waleed. And speaking of Waleed, we are joined by a very special guest, an Arsenal fan like myself, and also goes by the name of Waleed. What's up, my man?
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me on.
Of course, we're glad to have you on. All right, Waleed, my co-host, take it away.
So we're gonna go straight into it like we did on the last episode. Waleed, when did you start supporting Arsenal? Let us know.
So I started supporting Arsenal in 2014, and this is when I was probably getting into football as more of a regular weekly watch as opposed to a casual one. I remember I was on vacation with my family, and we were flying Emirates that time, and I was trying to see like the sports sections if they had any football videos, and they showed like a documentary of Arsenal's 3-2 win in the FA Cup final against Hull. So remembering that game, like knowing that we were 2-0 down in like the first 10 minutes, and then the comeback with Cazorla's free kick, Kashani's
Yeah.
equalizer, and Ramsey's goal. So yeah, like from that point, I was like, yeah, I like this club. And then the next season, we won the FA Cup again, 4-0 to Villa.
Nice.
Nice. All right. Well, on a more negative note, as an Arsenal fan, what has been your worst moment?
There's been way too many to choose from, but I think two stand out above all. Actually, three now that I think of it. But one of them is the Villarreal nil-nil and 2020-2021 in the Europa League semi-final.
Yeah.
And then the other two, which I think are slightly worse, is the 5-0 against City, especially in 21-22. This is when we were bottom of the league at that point, and we had like -9 goal difference, no goals scored yet,
Oh
like
yeah,
after
yeah,
three
yeah,
games.
Yeah.
And but I think easily the worst one has to be the Europa League final against Chelsea. I remember like that entire season, just like the fact that we got lucky so many times against like Valencia, Napoli. I think I'm not sure if it was that. I don't think it was that year, but Benfica was another year. But yeah, like just knowing how like good we were that season, especially coming after bottling top four to that 1-1 draw at home against Brighton, just losing the final against like our rival just made it so much worse.
Well, that's quite a few to pick from actually.
There's more, but these are the worst ones I think.
Um, Anyways, let's turn the page on a positive note. Your best moment as an Arsenal fan.
My best ones, I think, has to come from like the early days. Is the Welbeck last second goal against Leicester? If you remember, he was injured for like a
Oh yeah,
year, then he
yeah, yeah,
came
yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and especially because that was like that got us top of the league in like an intense title race at that point in 15-16. Also, another amazing moment for me was the win against Bournemouth, Reece Nelson's goal,
Oh yeah, last
and
year.
like knowing that even though things were getting a bit dodgy and like we know what happened in the end, we ended up winning the league, but like that kept our hope alive and our momentum. And also the 3-1 win against Spurs at home in 21-22. After those three games, which we lost all of them,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we come back with that win. So that was really nice for me.
Nice, nice.
It's crazy that Nelson goal. I remember when that happened, I was like, it's meant to be. This is it. It's written.
Yeah, yeah.
And oh
98th
man,
minute, exactly. Yeah. I just didn't happen
yeah,
first.
yeah. It's like that is
Yeah, yeah.
literally destiny. But oh well. All right. So when Arteta first came in, it was it was a bit of a shock for some, and we didn't know what to expect, especially as Arsenal fans. What is your take on his time as a manager? What do you think? How well do you think he's done? What are some of the big changes he's made for the club? Talk to me about that.
I personally was never sort of an Arteta out type of guy, especially during the bad years. Even though like he did finish eighth and eighth, I just thought to myself that like that's not because of our quality has gone down. Obviously, we'd had times where we could have easily won games and we didn't do that, but like I knew that the quality of the entire league was getting better, and I knew that they're realistically not going to be a good replacement out there. You know what I mean? So whether we'd stayed with Emery might be a different story. We could have done better, we could have done worse. But I'm very happy that Arteta did take over, obviously, because we've seen the steady progression. We've seen the vision since he took over. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen that picture of like his first squad versus like his current squad.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's night
Yeah.
and day. So I'm a huge fan of his. I like the project he's doing. I like that he's experimenting now, especially in the midfield with the new signings, which I'm assuming we'll get to in a bit. But I'm a fan of what he's doing, and I do like and trust him, and I know he's got a plan for the team.
that's nice. That's nice. So in regards to Arteta's period of time so far, we've seen the exponential jump that you went from 2 years ago to last season. Um, looking at how you ended the season last year and how much of a disappointment it was, especially for your fan base, what did you feel after that season ended? What did you feel you were going to bring on for the next year? Like for this, for I know the season just started, but going into this season, what did you feel you were going to bring from last year? Did you fear that you were going to bring that momentum into this season? And I know we don't have a big sample size to look at because at the time of recording, the Palace and Arsenal game still has yet to be played. Um, what did you feel towards the end of last season and going into this season? Maybe if you want to talk about preseason as well, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I feel this team like has a huge chip on their shoulder, especially because of the way last season did end. And like, you've seen all the stats that we spent 93% of the season top of the league. So to go on and not win it, obviously it is devastating for the club, the players and everything, but they're still young, they're still going to grow. And all of them are yet to have hit their prime. So I feel that that momentum, that fluidity, that consistency is really important. And one thing which like Arsenal never seemed to do back in the day was that they managed to grind out results. And I guess you could say that in the Nottingham Forest game that like we managed to grind out a result. Like it was a 2-1 win, but obviously some people will say it's controversial due to the call for a handball by Rice around the end of the game. But
Yeah,
even we
yeah,
should take our chances more frequently, and I think we had the lower XG. And like at home at first, like that's a bit of a worrying sign. But I feel that Arteta, the fact he did manage to get the 3 points, that's what's important, and that's why I hope we can keep doing, but also still playing our good football.
Yeah, I mean, you've just touched on it briefly. The game against Forest, obviously, first game of the new season. So let's go into that. Obviously, there was a bit of controversy towards the end, but as a whole, what did you think of Arsenal? I thought it was a decent performance. Obviously, like you said, they grinded out the win, and that's what Arsenal were struggling with last season. We had a few inconsistencies, especially towards the end, and that's what lost us the title. Obviously, including that big defeat to City. But obviously, we started the season not the best performance, but we grinded out a win. I want your take in detail on the performance.
The performance I think all round was decent, like for the first 70 minutes or so. But obviously, like that's the fine margins of football. You know what I mean? Like a small
Yeah.
moment can lead to a counter attack and a goal, and the end does get a bit nervy. And then obviously there are calls for the handball. So I think overall, while the game was good, even though we could have gotten like more goals, we probably should have gotten more chances. The fact that we had the lower XG just goes to show that we aren't creating enough proper goal scoring opportunities. Like you saw both Saka and Nketiah's goal. Like most of the time, those goals aren't going in. Like especially with
yeah.
Martinelli's assist, how he was able to get past the defender, and Saka obviously with that curl on the top corner that sometimes it can go out, sometimes it can reach the keeper. So I think we were lucky to get in the positions that we were, and we should put ourselves in better positions in the future. But I do think it was decent all around.
Yeah. Before we talk about the depth or like the squad itself that you've created so far for this upcoming season, just in regards to the Forest game, one thing I noticed was that especially towards the end of last season and then this Forest game, I didn't watch a lot of Arsenal's preseason games, so I don't know if that was carried on from preseason. But something that Bournemouth did was start straight off the bat attacking you, like starting that like shock kind of Arsenal. The same thing I think happened with I think it was Bournemouth last year as well. Um, they started off on like in a very strong way, and you guys didn't know how to react. And then once you got the 2-0 lead, and then Forest scored their 2-1. What I felt with Arsenal was they kind of like backed away and they were just trying to stabilize the 3 points that they're gonna gain from this game. I didn't feel like you were trying to finish the game off, and that kind of backfired last year when you just tried to maintain whatever you had within the game. Do you feel like that's a worry moving forward? Because it's kind of carried on from what happened last year. However, I don't like to dwell on just one game and to see what happens tonight, for example, against Palace. Do you think that's something that Arteta really needs to focus on in the future? Or is it like a player mentality type of thing?
I think it's a mix of both because, for example, like you said, the whole idea of like killing the game off. You could say that okay, Arsenal do have the better team, they do have the better players, they do have the ability to do that. But like I said, like it's fine margins. One wrong misplaced pass can lead to a counter attack and a goal. And like the fact you touched on, like the fact that we had a 2-0 lead, obviously, that two consecutive game run of last season against Liverpool at Anfield and against West Ham, at home. We did have a no, I think West Ham was also at their stadium, but
Yeah,
we did
okay,
have a
yeah.
2-0 lead. We did have a 2-0 lead in both games, and we like managed to blow in the end. Liverpool like in the 87th minute from Firmino's goal, and then West Ham even worse with Saka missing his penalty. So I do think that yeah, sometimes they do get nervy when they concede because they do think of games like that. They do think of how easy it is to lose their heads and how like easy it is to concede goals and the difference that 1 point makes versus 3 points. And the idea that you said of attacking early, which is what Forest tried to do. And last season you mentioned that Bournemouth did that. I think also Southampton did that in the game after
Yeah,
West Ham.
yeah,
I
yeah, they
think
did.
that 3 game stretch is really what killed the title charge because these are games you should be winning, and you can't you can't risk dropping any points to a team like City in a title race like that. So even Southampton, we can see an early goal to Alcaraz. I remember that from Ramsdale's
Yeah.
mistake. But yeah, I feel like when they're more switched on, it's easy just to take control of the game in the early stages, and then they can play their football well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about squad depth, personnel, transfers, ins and outs. So the big three, obviously, you've signed Kai Havertz from Chelsea, Declan Rice from West Ham, and Julian Timber. And then you've got players who came back on loan, like Pablo Mari and Balogun, and all these players that you sent out on loan back in January. You also acquired David Raya from Brentford on loan. I think it was the other day I saw that Arsenal organized an indoor game or like a closed game between Luton and themselves, and Raya actually started that game with like the full side. And then for the Forest game, Gabriel was dropped and Partey was kind of playing the inverted right back role. In regards to transfers, what do you think of the transfer window so far? And one thing I really want to know your take on, I know there hasn't been a lot of news lately about you guys bringing in more players or selling more players, but because the transfer window is coming to a close and a player like Balogun, for example, we know Jesus is out. Do you think he's supposed to be part of the squad, or should you send him back on loan, or even just sell him? So in regards to transfers and that Balogun point as well, if you can comment on it.
Yeah, for the transfers, I think the one thing we needed to work on was our defensive depth. And what sucks is that, first of all, we did sell Pablo Mari permanently back to Monza. So he's gone as an option for a left centre
Oh,
back.
okay, okay,
And also, obviously, the news that Timber is going to be out with an ACL injury for like half a year or so. So that was obviously a huge blow, and that's like it must suck for him for like playing for a new club and obviously getting man of the match against City in the Community Shield. As for the rest of the signings, I do like them a lot. I do really like the ambition we're showing in this window, and I think it met the fans' expectations in terms of we had to go out and spend big because we were so close last year, and if we just made a few minor improvements, that could push us over the line. But obviously, with a team like City, you never know. So I think what Arteta's trying to do and why he played Partey in that sort of inverted right back role. And I was shocked personally when he dropped Gabriel, knowing how solid he's been. He's played the most minutes last year, obviously. Um, so yeah, I think what he's trying to do, especially with the midfield, was that he wanted to switch from a 4-2-3-1 where he had the Jacques and Partey and those holding midfield roles. And Jacques was obviously pushing up a bit. You saw that he had a really good season last year. Got himself a few goals and a few assists. He also changed from that 4-2-3-1 role with obviously Saka, Odegaard, and Martinelli to a more of a 4-3-3 with Declan Rice playing a bit deeper in midfield as a lone CDM, just like how he was in West Ham. So yeah, I feel that could sort of work with Havertz and Odegaard would normally be the midfielders, but sometimes we saw in preseason Havertz was tried out as striker, and we saw that he did play that way with Nketiah out top instead of Jesus.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
with regards to Balogun, I think there are rumors that we rejected the £35 million bid from Inter, and we're asking for 50. I do think
Wow.
that's definitely yeah, yeah. I do think that's definitely something we should cash in on if given the opportunity, especially knowing that like okay, if he is going to be our third choice striker or maybe fourth if like you count Havertz. I do think so far it's been a good window, and with David Rea, it's good competition for Ramsdale. Obviously, like most people think we need a backup since Turner's now gone to Nottingham Forest, but I do think obviously it puts pressure on Ramsdale and Rea to both perform. Like Ramsdale as good and as clutch as he was in some moments. He did have a mistake here and there, which did ultimately cost us points, like I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier with the Alcaraz goal against Southampton. And especially, I think, around the end of the season when we lost 3-0 at home to Brighton, He gave the ball away to, I think it was Undaf to make that chip. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
I do rate the transfers. The one thing that does suck is that the defensive depth didn't really improve that much. Partey played all right as an inverted right back, so maybe if that's more names for rotation, that could still work. But yeah, hopefully, like this season, we have a full year with KVR as well as a left center back to replace Gabriel or like to
Yeah,
rotate with him.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I did think that we should have gone and signed Laporte from City, but obviously I don't think that would have been feasible given that there are our rivals, and I think now he's agreed terms with Al Nassr.
It's
So
true.
overall, it's still been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, one player I want to get your opinion on before we move forward towards the predictions and everything like that. You touched on him a little bit, is Kai Havertz. So obviously, a lot of Arsenal fans, myself included, have not gone easy on this transfer, at least on paper. A lot of us feel like we've been robbed by Chelsea, and at least from a tactical standpoint, we don't really know where he can fit in the system. So, what are your expectations from Havertz? Do you think he's going to perform better than what people expect? Do you think he will find his foot and find his position in the team, or do you think it's going to be a bit of a, I guess, a flop?
Obviously, I do hope for like I wasn't personally the biggest Havertz fan in terms of like how he was as a player, but obviously when we do make a signing, I do want them to perform and to do well.
Yeah.
So will I? Is he going to be a flop? Obviously, I hope not. But seeing how stacked the midfield is and how like interchangeable he can be, especially with guys like Smith Rowe coming back in, who had a really good season in 21-22, but most of last season he was out with an ACL injury. So if he is that same player, obviously there is that competition for Havertz and that pressure for him to perform. I do hope he fits in Arteta's system. I think what he's trying with what I mentioned with the 4-3-3 is that he plays him as more of a David Silva and City type of role because obviously Arteta is learning from Pep and he does want to replicate that sort of style. So obviously you can't really compare Havertz and David Silva with David Silva being
Yeah,
much
of
better.
course, of
But
course.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course. But hopefully he does like he because there is talent. There is like we've seen glimpses of what he can do in Chelsea sometimes, but not too consistently. And even in Leverkusen when he did have that insane season, which is why Chelsea did spend so much money to buy him. So there is a player there, and I hope Arteta can get the best out of him. But we just have to wait and see.
Hopefully, yeah, absolutely. You're right there.
Mhm.
All right. So building on that then, the expectations for the season, before we get your actual specific Prem predictions, I just want to hear your Arsenal specific expectations. How do you think we're going to do? Obviously, you can mention where we'll finish in the table. That's going to be part of your Prem predictions anyway later on. But what are your expectations for Arsenal this season?
So my expectations, obviously, like it is very, very. It's gonna be very tough to say we're gonna go on and win the league because you never know the competition that is in the Premier League. Obviously, you have City still playing their best football. So far, they've played two games. They haven't conceded the goal yet, and they're still going to continue to strengthen. You know what I mean? Like they've gotten Gvardiol, Kovacic, um,
Absolutely.
those guys. And I think as for Arsenal, given our improvements, I think second hopefully is where I would predict them to finish. Obviously, if I'm being hopeful, I'd want to say first, but I think second is still being sort of hopeful because you never know with the level of competition in the Premier League. And as for now being back in the Champions League and the cup runs, we'll see how those go. But hopefully in the Champions League we can get to at least the quarterfinals. I know the last
Yeah.
few times we've been in them, we haven't been able to get past the round of 16, so hopefully that can change.
Before
Yeah.
just we get into your prem predictions, do you feel as an Arsenal fan, I don't know what other, maybe Muhammad, you can comment on this as well. Do you guys feel
Yeah.
like it's a must, like it's a need to finish finish the season with a trophy? Doesn't matter what type of trophy it is. Do you feel that's a necessity, or do you feel the necessity of winning a big trophy to actually establish yourselves as the way you brought that momentum in last season going into this season?
Walid, go ahead. You can answer first.
I think sort of it being a necessity. Normally, for a club like Arsenal, you would think that every year they would try to go and win whatever they can, just like any other big club. But I feel, especially given last season how it ended, fans were hoping that we can get the double of both Europa League and the Premier League, but both of them unfortunately weren't meant to be. And especially in both cup runs last year, going out pretty early to City, and I think it was Brighton the League Cup. And yeah, I think that's definitely going to help us learn. I do think we should be aiming to get a trophy this year. If you want to count the Community Shield or not, that's another conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think the squad's definitely good enough, and they do deserve some silverware. So as long as they're playing their football and they show that they deserve it, then good things are going to come their way.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, regardless of what happens, the fans are going to get behind the team, especially after last season. They did better than anyone expected. I mean, we had the youngest average squad in the Premier League, and we were, at the top of the league for most of the season. So we're always going to get behind the team and the club. I think finally we deserve some silverware, a proper trophy that we can get behind, we can talk about. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for the season. Obviously, with Man City around, and not just Man City, you got teams like Newcastle looking better than they ever have. You got genuine title contenders and top four contenders. So the Premier League is always a challenge. But as long as we do our best in the Premier League and we give the Champions League a good shot, I think the fans will be happy. So yeah.
Nice. Well, okay, Waleed, take it away. Prem predictions.
Prem predictions, man. I'll go through the top six because, like, and obviously I made this before the season started, but like, I don't want to be that sort of reactionary fan that things can change. The main reason I say that as well is because, like, last year I remember predicting Villa to finish sixth, and they spent most of the season because I believed in the Gerrard project. I thought he was doing well, and they spent most of the season, sorry, in 17th, and then Emery came in. Obviously, they finished seventh, so like still one off, but you never know with the league. So I think with sixth, I initially said Newcastle, but like seeing their performances, seeing the way they play, they can easily finish in the top four. I didn't think that was really possible given the
Yeah.
competition.
Yeah, yeah.
At fifth, I put Chelsea. Knowing with the quality of the squad they have and the quality of Pochettino, it is going to take some time, but I do think they'll eventually gel together and play good football. I think the top four for me is a bit of a lock. I put United in fourth personally. I do think that while their squad is good, like we saw against Spurs, they do have tendencies to crumble and miss good chances and not really, play the ball properly. And then like you have some individuals in the team, they, egos clash and everything.
Yeah.
So you never know. At third, I put Liverpool. I do think that this is going to be a redemption season for them, even though they are capable of making silly mistakes, just like they did against Bournemouth. They didn't end up winning the game 3-1, so they're always going to be a good squad. Now, obviously, with their new midfield system, even though they've been playing with Gakpo, McAllister, and Szoboszlai all as a midfield three, having Endo come in, that might be able to change things, so you never know. And I put us second and City first, and I touched on both already as to why.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any thoughts on the relegation places?
Oh yeah, relegation. I do think as sad as it is because like they are a good team and I do want to see them do well. I do think Luton are going to be going down. I just don't think their squad is Premier League quality, and it was a good moment for them to go up, but I don't think it's going to last. Sheffield United as well. Their squad is just not fit for the intense competition.
Yeah.
And I do think the third squad that could join them is Wolves. Even though Wolves they did have a good showing against United and they were unlucky to lose, I do think that, for example, their games against Brighton, like they don't have enough quality, especially in that midfield where they lost Ruben Neves, Moutinho,
Yeah.
two crucial players. They were able to replace them, and the whole obviously managerial situation with Lopetegui leaving days before the season and Gary O'Neill coming in to replace him. Obviously, I could be very wrong about all of these, but we'll see how it goes.
All
Nice.
right. So, lastly, I want to get four player positions from you in Arsenal. I want your predicted player of the season, your top goal scorer of the season, your top assister of the season, and as much as we don't want to manifest it, I want to hear who you think might be the flop of the season.
Yeah. I think player of the season last year for me was Odegaard, but I think this year Saka is really going to come to his own. So I might say him as player of the season. Given that, I'll give him the top goal scorer of the season, but I'll give Odegaard the top assister. As for flop of the season, I know we were talking about him earlier, and I really don't want this to be true, but I don't feel Havertz is really gonna fit into the system as well. Uh, Hopefully, I'm wrong. We'll see how it goes, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. If anything, obviously there is, like I said, other players who are hungry enough to fit in that role, and Arteta
Absolutely.
trusts them to uh, fill in fill in the position of the first place team.
Yeah. As a Chelsea
Yeah,
fan, I'm
absolutely.
counting that 007 for Havertz.
Oh man. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
that's already started.
yeah, I mean, I think that's everything. I think we've covered a lot about Arsenal. Definitely the Arsenal fans who do watch this are going to be happy. But yeah, so that's it from us. Obviously, Waleed, thank you. And obviously, Waleed, as in my co-host, thank you as well. So yeah, been a very special episode. Obviously, you can listen on Spotify. If you're too busy, you can't watch, etc. Link below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.